Welcome to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series, brought to you by the C.T. Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. We're having a conversation about work-life balance, how to navigate and overcome challenges within your career, and how to make business more accommodating to a diverse workforce.
If you Google the word lead as in leading, you come up with close to 1.5 billion as in B results. And if you think about it, that's about one article for every 5 human beings on this planet, all around this topic of leading. So clearly it's a lot. A lot has been said, written, spoken about, debated on the idea of leading and leadership. And yet, I often wonder, is the world better today than, say, 50 or 100 years ago because we now know how to lead? Are we doing a better job leading? Has leadership become easier because we have people researching it and studying about it? And today, I have with me a guest who is unique in many ways. In fact, I look at her and wonder, I really do, how does she do it? How does she do it? She is Associate Professor at the C.T. Bauer College of Business. She has conducted research on leadership, strategy, organizational learning and behavior. She is an associate editor of the world's leading academic leadership journal, Leadership Quarterly. She recently won the most prestigious teaching award given at the University of Houston, the Distinguished Leadership in Teaching Excellence Award, which is given to one faculty member annually. And considering the fact that the university has hundreds of faculty working here, this is a highly coveted award and is not easily given or won. Equally important in my mind, she is a mother. She is a mother of 11-year-old triplets with a T. And she is passionate about autism awareness with 2 of her 3 children on the autism spectrum. And the best part, if I were to describe her to someone who has not seen her, I would say, she's someone who greets you with a smile. She always has a smile, a gentle nod, no matter what time of day. And her conversations, all her conversations, anything you talk to her about, it's all about bringing people together, facilitating, enabling, contributing. In fact, she contributes way more than she consumes. You would think we created the title of this podcast series, How Does She Do It? With her in mind. In this case, her is Dusya Vera. Dusya Vera. Welcome, Dusya.
Thank you very much.
Our goal in these conversations is to unpack ideas, demystify the things we're challenged by, to really inspire ourselves and others to action, and to share ideas that will create positive change. So my first question to you, tell us your story. What was little Dusya like growing up? What were her dreams and who influenced her? Parents, teachers?
Let me tell you, I was born in Ecuador, in Guayaquil, which is a city at the coast, so, close to the beach. And I had a fantastic childhood. When I feel very fortunate, it's really a blessing. Sometimes I hear of people sharing, hardships during childhood. I had a fantastic childhood. My parents, extremely loving parents. I have 3 siblings, so we were 4 in total. I am the oldest one, so 3 girls and 1 boy. And what I remember from my childhood is a lot of stimulation. My parents are academics too. They have PhDs in psychology. At the time when in Ecuador it was impossible to get a PhD. Even recently, we are in the 21st century, Ecuador didn't have any PhD programs. No university in Ecuador had a PhD program. But I'm talking about the 70s. So in the 70s, my parents left Ecuador to go to Spain to get a PhDs in psychology. And I was already born, so I went with them to Spain while they were doing their PhDs. My two sisters were born there, and then they went back to Ecuador, and my brother was born. So academia was always around that, and this idea of, so my parents inspired us always to continue learning. And they did tell us, if you don't find what you want to learn here, we went abroad. You girls and you boy, you should go abroad too. So that, I think that's what I remember the most about my childhood. And in Ecuador, we also had a lot of classes. I was in ballet classes, piano classes, ceramic classes, English classes. My parents put me in a lot of English classes, which of course it helped, it paid off. But people laugh when I tell them in the summer, I had 5 hours of English a day, Monday to Friday. So it was a lot of English and a lot of music and ballet and this and that. So very blessed, very blessed. So of course, to answer your question, my parents really are, my inspiration, and they were tough also in the sense that they were very responsible, and they wanted us to be very disciplined and responsible, but they were very loving, and it was really a blessed childhood.
Wow, that sounds so inspiring, and to see where you are today, I'm sure you're providing the same stimulation to your children. So that's really neat. Now, prior to coming into academia, it looked like you worked in the financial and IT sectors in Latin America, with organizations including the Guayaquil Stock Exchange, the Pacific Bank, and Consul Conti Consulting. What did you learn about these organizations and about working in a corporate setting? Both about organizations, and what did you learn about yourself?
So of those three, the one that really resonates and really make a mark in myself, in my career, and in me personally, is the stock exchange. So I had finished my MBA, and I go back to Guayaquil, and then eventually I was hired by the Guayaquil Stock Exchange. But you have to imagine this. When people think it's stock exchange, I think about the New York Stock Exchange. So I think about this big thing, huge Wall Street. This is the beginnings of a stock exchange in Guayaquil. And even the capital, Quito, both were tiny. So imagine tiny stock exchange. Imagine people not knowing really what a stock is. So it's the beginning of the capital markets in Ecuador. Other countries in South America, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Mexico, they were more advanced. So we had a lot of us was in the Guayaquil Stock Exchange, a lot of us were learning from the experience. We were traveling a lot. We had all these people from Colombia, Argentina, helping us, and we visiting them. So it was a lot of learning. And we felt so proud and so engaged because we were really, literally building something completely new from zero. So that I really that time for me was precious because it was a small organization. We were doing lots of things, very entrepreneurial, and a lot of education for the public in terms of, what this is an investment opportunity for you. A lot of conversations also with companies to consider going, into the stock market. So for me, it was a lot of learning. And we were given a lot of responsibilities. We were the president, the CEO of the stock exchange trusted us, and I was just fresh with my MBA. I was more in that time more in IT, so I was the IT director of the stock exchange. But because we were reporting directly to the CEO, there was a lot of strategy in terms of how do we get where we want to go. So lots of learning. It was a big responsibility. And a lot of us were very young at the time. So it was just a big, and personally, I think I grew, because I had to lead. It was the first time that I had a big group that I was leading. So I was responsible for them too. So it was a lot, just very fast-paced learning. And at the same time, this idea of creating something new.
What was the gender equation like? It's fascinating to hear what you're saying because you clearly learned a lot. Was there a sense of, as many women as men working there? Did you all even think about those issues?
You know what? That's a great question. We were the team that was reporting to the CEO, so that you could say the top management team where I was. It was very equal. Yeah, the percentages were like, I could say 50-50. So it was a company, because if you think about Latin America and if you think about Guayaquil or Ecuador, yes, there is a lot of what in Spanish we call machismo, the macho. So there could have been easily, very tiny percentage of women, but no, I think this company was very balanced in terms of women in the top management team. So yeah, that was very nice. Now that you make me aware of that. Yeah.
So that's fascinating, right? So because it tells me that it's, like you said, it's a new venture, and they want to make a success of it. So what do? They go out there and hire the best talent.
Yeah.
The gender didn't matter.
No, and there were people having, I was single at the time, but people were having children, and so it was very family friendly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. So we're now going to take a short break to hear an important message from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with our guest, Dusya Vera, on How Does She Do It?
Bauer College's executive education program is training business professionals and leaders to tackle the challenges of tomorrow. Courses in consulting, strategy, analytics, project management, and more led by Bauer's award-winning faculty. Find open enrollment programs at bauer.uh.edu/exec.
Welcome back to How Does She Do It? And here we are with our guest, Dusya Vera, Professor Dusya Vera from the CT Bauer College of Business. So Dusya, we talked about your work in the corporate world, your work in IT, and then you moved into academia and decided to research leadership and strategy. Tell us about that transition.
In terms of the academia part, I always taught, even if it was on the weekends. So even when I was in the stock exchange or in the bank or in the consulting company, I was, you could say, using North American terms, I was an adjunct or a lecturer for the university where I used to study in Ecuador for my undergrad. So I always kept the connection with teaching. I always loved teaching. And in Ecuador, you could, at that time, you could teach without a PhD. So when I had, even before having my MBA, I was already, teaching. And with my MBA, I kept teaching. So I always taught. But in Ecuador, you couldn't teach. It was not you couldn't. You could, but it was very hard to have teaching as your full-time job at that time in the 90s. So people who were teachers or professors had multiple jobs. You knew they had. So at that time, my job was the stock exchange, and my part-time, a hobby was teaching on the weekends. And then I found an organization, an institution opened in Ecuador that actually it was a place where they did value teaching and even research and case writing, and that could be your only job. So I moved there. I switched to that organization, and that they were some of the ones who encouraged me. You should get a PhD. And that's when I said officially, you know what, this is it. This is my transition. This is not going to be my hobby anymore. I'm going to do that PhD. And my plan originally was to go back to Ecuador to that institution, but I ended up here at Bauer. But that was so, academia was always in my mind. The question was, how do I make this my career, given that the market there was different? And then the second part of your question was
your research on leadership. How did you decide?
Yeah, leadership. Okay, so I transitioned. So first I transitioned to academia, and second, I didn't want to do IT anymore or operations anymore, which had been part of my MBA. I was really fascinated by the big picture. I didn't want to do parts of how a company works, but in my mind, strategy tells me, where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there? And that was the big picture answer. So that was what interested me. And then leadership, I think leadership was appealing to me because of this idea that whoever is at the top matters. People say that leaders sometimes are just symbolic, but there is also an idea, that person matters. And that's a debate still. Do leaders still matter? That was fascinating to me. I thought, yes, those people do matter, and their beliefs, their desires, the pressures on them impact the decisions they make. And so that I wanted to study that. I wanted to study the people in the top management team, the CEO, the boards, because I think they do matter a lot.
Absolutely. And so you came into academia, and as we both know, moving up in academia it sounds more flexible in many ways than working in industry, but it can be fairly challenging in terms of the requirements for promotion, tenure decisions. And yet you did it all. In your mind, what are some of the things that we can change so as to make this more friendly to people who want to take time off, or people who want to transition from part-time to full-time? Or how do we accommodate the needs of working families in an academic environment?
In my case, when I joined Bauer, I was married, so I had recently gotten married. And it was during those 5 years when I was an assistant professor that I had my kids. I had the triplets in the middle of my assistant professor years. But I think that environment of support was very helpful. Teaching online after I had the kids, I taught a lot of classes online. And again, the chair was even the one who proposed it. Dusya, you can teach online. So it was it was a perfect situation for me, and I felt very supported by both the chair and the dean. By the time, the tricky part was that those 2 years, the exact those 2 years after the kids were born and the tenure clock was ready, the exact time when I was putting my package together for the tenure process, that's when my 2 kids were diagnosed with autism. So I have this memory in my mind that I will never forget, that I was in my office and I was trying, photocopying and just printing all the articles and all the, the student evaluations. And I was, really crying in the office. At the same time that I was putting this package together, because we were going through all these medical examinations for the kids. And then somebody knocked the door. And I opened the door. He's like, oh, who's knocking the door now? And it was one of my PhD students. And she could see me, like I was, trying to print things and crying. And she's like, Dusya, can I help you? And I was like, yes, please help me. So she helped me to put the package together. We had to do all these folders. So it was a tough time. It was perfect timing for me because the process, was going to start, and whatever I had done, that's what I did, until my tenure clock finished, and it was time to go through the process. So I was very lucky that the years after I got tenure were the hardest ones, because that's when I was dealing with a lot of the kids' therapies. So it was a relief that happened immediately after the process had started, and immediately after I got tenure. So because I was dealing with a lot after I got tenured. And then these years after I got tenure, that's when what you're saying, this balance between how much time, I love my job, so how much time do I put into the job I love, and the research that I love, and the teaching that I love, and the service that I am, very happy to contribute. And at the same time, how do I help these 2 kids to reach their potential, plus, a husband and another kid. So that's when, but all these years, I still felt that we had a great environment at Bauer where we have flexibility. I know it's harder, it's easier, a little bit more flexible for the professors than would be for the staff members, because, professors can come and go during the day for doctor's appointments and things like that. So when you ask me that question, I can see that we could have a different conversation if it's like how I feel the faculty, I felt very supported. There is a question if every department is as supportive as my department was with me, and all the chairs that I've had were always supportive. And the deans, I've always felt they were supportive. It is a question if every department is like that, and if the staff can feel that same support.
You make some very good points, and there's several themes that came out of what you said. One is that if an employee is valued, if there's a person in the organization who's clearly contributing, which I have no doubt you were and are, that's when leadership says, we have to make an exception to all these policies because that's the talent we want here in this organization. That's what makes our organizations grow. So it's great that the leadership at that time recognized that. And I would not underestimate the reason they did that for you was because they saw that your contributions are way, way more than what they're providing you in terms of resources. So that's a nice message to share in that it can be done. It can be done with the right leadership, and it can be done when there is genuine talent that the employee brings in. So there is a responsibility on both sides for the employees to make sure they contribute and for the organizational leadership to say, this is what it's all about. And there might be guidelines on a tenure clock in academia, 6 years or 7 years or whatever the case might be, but we can make exceptions when there are exceptional people that we want here in this organization. So I love your story, and thanks for sharing that. You deal with a lot. You have your research, you have your teaching, you have triplets, there's autism, and you hear these comments all the time, life's not fair. Do you ever think it's not fair?
You know what, at the beginning, I think every time somebody faces a challenge and people, and everybody has a challenge, at the beginning it was very hard, and it's like, why autism multiplied by 2? And then even my third son was also having challenges. So it was like, why is this all happening to me? But the same can be said of a person who's saying, cancer arrives in to visit, or a divorce, or losing your job. There can be there are many types of challenges. And sometimes I realize at some point is that others may not have autism in their family, but they have divorce, and they have cancer, and they have somebody lost their job, or drugs, or so really we all get it. We all, sooner or later, life is about growing, and I don't think that life is unfair. I think life is perfect, and I think we all get at some point opportunities for growing to the next level. And so I think I had a very easy life, actually, until I don't remember anything difficult. Maybe everything changed once I had the kids and the kids were diagnosed with autism. I think everything before that was super, super easy. Even tenure, studying PhDs, I only remembered everything being easy. I do think that autism was very hard at the very beginning because it was a shock, and because I didn't, and also autism and cancer and all these other challenges and opportunities, you lose control. And we are, especially type A personalities, we like to be in control. We like to have variables that we can manage. And these things, throw us out of our scripts. What is autism? What is cancer? What do you mean we're going to get a divorce? What do you mean this person died? What do you mean I don't have a job? So we lose control. So I think all these challenges are really opportunities that are going to help us to develop parts that we didn't know we had to develop. So in my case, patience to levels that I never imagined, humility to levels I never imagined, perseverance, drive, compassion. So all of these things, I know we were chatting earlier, what can we learn from our kids, or what can we learn from situations like this? My kids have taught me a lot, This idea, I think the biggest thing that I have learned from my kids is that I was very goal-oriented. We are academics, we are everybody, engineers, academics, we are very goal-oriented. And with my kids, I realized for some things, you really have to, it's a journey, it's the process. We cannot delay our happiness until we achieve a goal. My husband is very wise. One time he told me the following thing. He said, Dusya, I see a pattern in you. He met me before the PhD, so he was like, he says I used to say things like that. When I get the PhD, I will relax because my studies, my studies will be done. Then he said, I was saying, when I finish the dissertation, Then it was, when I get a job, I will relax because, that will give me, I will know where I will be, blah, blah, blah. When I get tenure or when we have a baby, I will relax because, so he says that I used to be like that it was always when I achieve the next thing, I will relax or I will be happy or I will not stress anymore. And so at some point I realized, and then somebody else told me, and I put the two ideas together. He says, Dusya, that means you're delaying your happiness. You're delaying happiness until you check all these marks, until the dissertation is done, the job is found, the tenure is done, you are pregnant, the kids are, and then it's going to be, when the kids, so and with autism, it's hard to say when the kids recover from autism, because that can take forever. The kids do keep improving and improving and improving, but this idea of recovery, which is possible, it is out of it's out of my 100% out of my control. So that was a huge lesson. So this idea of, can we wake up every day and not worry so much about I'm gonna be happy when I achieve all these things, but just enjoy, enjoy the kids, enjoy the job, with tenure, without tenure, with full professor, without, whatever. Just enjoy, because if we keep being just goal-oriented all the time, we are delaying a lot of happiness, and sometimes, life is short, and we have all these check marks.
Amazing. So don't wait for that perfect stage. The journey is important.
The journey. So I think that was a big lesson.
One last question, and that is, this is all about making workplaces more family friendly and learning from people who've done that, who've dealt with challenges. If we were to put a sign outside Bauer College so that any visitor who comes into the college realizes that that's what this college culture is about enabling the best talents to surface by creating a workplace that's very family friendly, and we were to put something on that signpost that says something to that effect, what would your message be?
Yeah. So two ideas come to my mind. One is, it's more on the academic side. It sounds in my mind, it's something like compassion with accountability. So this mixture of, we are all accountable, and at the same time we are compassionate. Because, only compassion, it would be like, yes, I understand you're going through. Yes, I understand what you're going through. Yes, I understand what you're... So we would keep understanding what everybody's going through, which is wonderful. But the accountability part would be lost. Accountability by itself also, it's not enough, because it's like, you told me you were going to do this, you do it. I don't care if you have cancer, or you told me you were going to do this, I don't care if somebody died yesterday. But compassion with accountability, I think, is what we were talking about earlier. This understanding that, yes, I am committed, I am 100% committed. At the same time, yes, this just happened to me. So the other expression, so like we could put a sign that says, compassion with accountability, or accountability with compassion. But we could also put a sign, something like, we're all in this together. This idea of the journey we are all going through something. I was just chatting the other day with my colleagues. We have colleagues who are, have adopted kids. We have colleagues who are raising, grandchildren. We have a lot of colleagues and staff members are in the sandwich generation. Even I am in the sandwich generation. I have parents in Ecuador who are my mother's health is not the strongest right now, so I have to, constantly think about going to Ecuador. So I think we're all in this together, because we all at some point are going to have a challenge, or many that are going to stretch us, are going to really push us to stretch ourselves to the next level of developing our character and our in this case, virtues, patience, humility, all these things are going to help us to be a better person.
Thank you so much, Dusya. So inspiring and amazing.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Working Wisdom podcast series from the CT Bauer College of Business, brought to you by the Working Families Initiative. The initiative aims to provide support and access for women in business school and the workforce, and to generate research that organizations can use to implement policies and standards to benefit a diverse workforce. For more information about Bauer College and this podcast series, visit www.bauer.uh.edu/podcasts.